Hello everyone and welcome to another Deck Tech. Today we have something a little different in terms of what I kind of normally play in Eternal. I don't usually play Stonescar decks. Actually, I don't think I've ever actually played classical Stonescar aggro. Oh, no, I lied. I played Gunslingers for like a day. That's not the classic Stonescar aggro list, but I played that shortly after it became pretty big in the tournaments. But going into this season of April, or chapter as we should call it, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to play. Normally I'm playing something with Primal, sort of control deck or Felon or something like that, and it just didn't feel like I wanted to be there. But I knew I kind of wanted to play in Cold Blood because Tavrod is back better than ever, and not even just Tavrod, just these Justice decks are all over the place and they're super good. And also Torch and Annihilate I think are really good right now. Unseen Commando is big. Auric Interrogator's big, like it's in multiple decks, same with Unseen Commando. And Torch is also another good just Aegis pop, so we can Aegis pop our good old Champion and Cunning, stuff like that. So these are just cards I wanted to play, and just these colors just seems like where I wanted to be. I really like the ability to draw off Quarry with this deck, so let's just actually just get into it here. So we have Dark Return, pretty standard in these type of decks where we have these solid units. If they die, we just get it back. It's bigger. There's a lot of synergy with this deck with Auric Interrogator, and Dark Return is the classic one. And it's just really good because sometimes they'll spend their whole turn killing a thing. We just bring it right back, throw it back on the field. They could be their only removal spell, and they're like, oh damn, that sucks. Sabotage, I kind of want to play third, but right now 2 is good, especially on ladder in an ETS tournament type environment. Maybe a third, or even just 2, and then have your other 2 in the sideboard, depending what you think is going to come up. Our last ETS, a Chalice deck one, so maybe bump this up 1 or 2 if you thinking you're going to face more of those type decks. Torch 4, of course, clears out any early threats. Makes way for all your dudes. We're not playing anything on turn 1. No Oni run-ins in this deck. Nothing. No unit we're playing down turn 1. So if we have an open power, usually we don't because we'll set it up that way. We're playing the crest or just play a banner on turn 1. But turn 1, we just put down a power. They play a guy, we can then torch it, play our guy the next turn. Annihilate gets rid of those pesky, annoying Sandstorm Titans, which will be a nuisance for our Crimson Fire Maws, but also just in general, I think it's gotten better. There's so many hits. I mean, this deck it's full of them, but in general, normally, not really normally, but the old Artiport decks had a harder time to have targets for this, but now it's almost every drop they have. They have Rip Knife Assassin, they have Auric Interrogator, they have Unseen Commando, they have Valkyrie Enforcer. Some are playing Impending Doom. So you have all these hits, and even your other aggro decks. I think Skycrack has the least amount of hits for this, but they're still hits. So playing 2 is still very good. Quarry digs us deeper. We could put stuff into our Void, Dark Return it back. Also making stuff like Jack only costs 4 is pretty sweet. Play this on turn 2. Turn 3 we play another unit or something else. Turn 4 we drop Jack if we have the 3 fire. It can be quite powerful. We kind of outlaw a standard 2-drop in our fire decks. It's great to have 2 2-drops that have Warcry. And if you ever get a Warcry on Auric Interrogator, draw it, play it on turn 3. It's like the best feeling ever. But also, like these 2 early drops, getting these Warcries going early and early, going on to all these units that are overall just annoying to deal with anyway, and with Warcries on them, like Champion Chaos, it gets overwhelmed. That's awesome. Crimson Firemaw, making this bigger, can then stand up to Sandstorm Titans, or just hit harder if it's flying in the air. Making a big Statuary Maiden is also just a awesome thing to do. Jack is awesome. Making him bigger is even better. I drew him on turn 5 once, and he was like a 9. What's that? 9/7. I was just like, oh, I'm gonna play this guy. He's pretty sweet. So there's favor. Probably the best Aegis popper Again, just we have so many good Aegis poppers in this deck, and that's I love being in that sort of position. That's what I like about this deck. There's lots of just very good little intricate things that it does that I just feel is pretty good in this meta right now. Just popping these little Aegises on our Crown Watch Paladins and then torching it and stuff like that. Or end of turn, torch it, and then our turn we Var's favorite, slam down something else. A good old Auric Interrogator, one of the better units at the 3 spot. Good old 4/3, and then we have so many ways to make it bigger between the War Cries, Dark Return, Stature Maidens, Cudgels, Jack. Like, so many different cards make this thing bigger. It is awesome, and it's just a threat on its own. People, just try to deal with the 4/3 anyway, and then they kill it. It leaves us open to play Champion Chaos, Crimson Firemaw. They use their Vanquish on this. Sweet, we have Firemaw and Jack. Let's go. Champion Chaos, it's your classical Champion Chaos, Crimson Firemaw. Super good. You could say maybe play Impending Doom in this spot, but I really like Crimson Firemaw just in general as a card. There's some times, especially if you have the engine of Auric Interrogator, we're drawing multiple cards a turn, and usually in games we're at like 5 to 6 power if we don't flood and stuff like that. So when you draw those 2 cards, you can then next turn play your Jack. I think there was one game where I played a Jack and then a 0 cost Champion of Chaos in the same turn. So it's just like you can do crazy things like that, and it's just there's more value I think between that and Impending Doom. Impending Doom gets it pings you. I like the upside of Crimson Firemaw a bit more. In Cold Blood, my original few runs of this only ran 2. I upped it to 3 because I was facing just tons of Argenport. So there's little things I've kind of shifted here and there, depending on how the ladder is that day. I think I had 3 Sabotage and 2 in Cold Blood, but I want to overall just another removal spell, and against these Justice decks, Cold Blood is sweet. Statuary Maiden kind of helps this deck be that mid-range deck. I was trying more aggressive cards like Highwayman, but with the way this deck pans out, I think Maiden is just better. Making those cudgels, making Auric Interrogator better, can just force your opponent to be like, oh, I can't really attack into that. I don't want my guy to die. And you have stuff like Moktos, not worried about, stuff like Dawnwalkers. It just gives the deck more play, and just we're not trying to buzzsaw them with Grendins and stuff like that, where Highwayman and Bandit Queen will be better. Statuary Maiden is just the glue that holds all these pieces together, I feel. And then Jack, we've kind of talked about. It's much better than I thought it would be. There's just times where it just takes over. Like, just by itself, it's a big dude. They've used, a bunch of their removal to get rid of these early drops. Jack comes down. Yeah, it can get hit by literally like everything. Well, that's fine. But there was a time where they played Tavrod and I played Jack, and I was like, okay, I'm going to swing with Jack, and you're going to be forced to block with Tavrod and not gain no value. And it was great. Jack makes your other attacks better, making your Recano Outlaws, Assassins bigger on your swings. You can kind of swing all in and force people into interesting blocks, and it's very good. Now into the power base. The original list was a little bit lower on fire, because you can see up here we have 28 fire cards, 34 shadow. So we're leaning more towards the shadow. But if you look at our power base, we have more fire. That's because that's 3, this is 2. Our only 2 costs influence on shadow is in Cold Blood. So we need to hit these fire. So we're on more of that side. I've only been playing it with that shift because there was a couple of games where I noticed where it was getting hard to play Jack. So I kind of upped one of these and took away one of these. I think it was either 1 or 2, I forget. And the original list I looked at, no one was playing this because those were older lists, and this monument has been slightly buffed from 3/3 to a 4/4. I believe that was the buff. It just gives us another unit. It's a 4/4 lifesteal. Lifesteal can be sweet, and then it can get pumped up from Jack, from War Cries if it's later in the game, or cudgels pretty well. Then the rest of the power base is pretty standard. Now, if you're playing this in ETS or in any other tournament setting with sideboard, you have lots of other options. You can, another In Cold Blood, more Annihilates, Suffocates. You can piece together your removal the way you want. You can play Treachery in the side. You can play more Sabotages. You can play all sorts of stuff. You can morph this deck pretty well. There's lots of good Shadow sideboard cards and even some good Fire ones. Boar. There's lots of just good play around cards that you can play in your sideboard. In terms of matchups against Artport, it's pretty good so far. I've played a fair amount, and I think I want to say I have a positive record. I'm 95% positive I have a positive record against them. We come out similar speeds. We do have the advantage of playing in Cold Blood, so you get rid of their pesky dudes. Jack and Tavrad can go head to head pretty well. Sometimes it depends how quick we can be out of the gates, and if they get Rune Hammers, because Rune Hammer does kill Crimson Firemaul, which is one of the bad sides against, when you measure this against like Impending Doom. But if it gets a Warcry, it's pretty sweet. We do have the Sabotages. That's why I like 2 Sabotage, or just Sabotage in general in main, so we can take out their Rune Hammers before they get them. One thing I do want to say is there are times where you want to save Torch for the Trader, the Ground Trader, I believe that's the card. So, if you have a chance, use the Annihilate first, and then, not all versions are playing the Trader, so you kind of have to gauge and see what's going on. So, you gotta kind of play around with your removal there in terms of that. Against Feln, I've just been wiping the floor against the Feln decks, just coming out fast and hitting hard. It's a pretty good matchup. Against Praxis, a similar setting. We're coming out hard, and they're playing like Titan. We'll just annihilate it, swing. But they can overwhelm us with their big units. If we don't have an answer to a Titan, it does think and lock us down a little bit. Hard to swing through at times. But I feel like it has these positive matchups all over the place. And against Grenadins, it's fine. Again, like Saturn Remain helps against a lot of these matchups because of them not being able to access any of the void. Against any real mid-rangey Justice type deck, I feel pretty good against. Against some of the control decks, against Chalice, I can see this being a little bit rough. None of our removal is really that great. We only have 2 Sabotage. We do have stuff like Dark Return to bring, you got of course play around that harsh roll and stuff like that. But overall matchups, there's nothing that really stands out that when I go into ranked ladder, it's like, oh, I pray don't play against this. There's nothing I feel like that going into this deck. And overall, just really been liking it. It's been a lot of fun. And I think in my last 10 games, I looked 8-2. And I want to say in my last, not sure, I want to say I'm like 65 to 75% win rate with this deck. I really should be like making Excel spreadsheets with this stuff and actually writing it down and keeping better track, but I don't have time for that sometimes. Like I'm doing something like, oh, I can play one quick game, but play a game, log off, go run around my house, do something else. So maybe in the future I'll do some better tracking of decks. Give you something to look forward to, but I did look at my profile in the last 10 games. I am 8-2. And yeah, so if you play this style of deck, the more mid-rangey Stonescar type deck, let's talk about it. It's really fun, really interesting to play. I don't see too many people playing Jack or really this style of deck on ladder. They're playing either the all-in aggro type deck, or when they go to mid-range, they're playing like Argenport or some sort of time variant. So something a little different, something fun, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you play it, let's talk about it.